The Committee on Science, Space, and Technology will come to order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare recesses of the committee at any time. Welcome to today's hearing entitled An Overview of the Budget Proposal for the National Institute of Standards and Technology for fiscal year 2017. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes for an opening statement. I would first like to thank Dr. Willie E, Director of the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, and Undersecretary of Commerce for Standards and Technology for appearing today to discuss the NIST budget request for fiscal year 2017. This committee has a long bipartisan record of support for NIST and its contributions to research and development. As a non-regulatory agency within the Department of Commerce that works closely alongside industry, NIST works to promote U.S. innovation and industrial competitiveness by advancing measurement, science, standards, and technology. The fiscal year 2017 budget request for NIST totals $1 billion, an increase of $50.5 million, or about 5% from the fiscal year 2016 enacted level. A large portion of this request is $730.5 million for NIST's scientific and technical research services. The STRS request includes increases for work conducted on measurement science for future computing technologies and applications, advanced sensing for manufacturing, biomanufacturing or engineered biology, addressing spectrum issues, neutron research, and lab-to-market or technology transfer promoting data sharing efforts. The requested increases from NIST for FY17 would also be devoted in large part to bolster advanced manufacturing initiatives at NIST. In fact, $47 million is requested for the National Network for Manufacturing Innovation. This program was authorized by the Revitalize American Manufacturing and Innovation Act of 2014, authored by Chairman Smith and approved by this committee on a bipartisan basis. NIST is authorized to use up to $5 million per year of appropriating funds for FY 2015 to FY 2024, and the Department of Energy is authorized to transfer to NIST up to $250 million of appropriated funds for that same period of time. To administer NNMI, the RAMI Act also established strategic direction for the program and rules to assure fair competition for federal dollars. The FY17 request for NNMI is an 88% increase from what was appropriated for FY16, and my colleagues and I will be asking questions this morning about that increase and other aspects of it. We will also learn more today about the Institute's investment in cybersecurity and the NIST cybersecurity framework. As you all know, one of the great challenges of the 21st century is cybersecurity. This committee has held multiple hearings on cybersecurity since the news over the summer that the OPM was the target of 2 massive data breaches, exposing the sensitive information of over 25 million Americans, including me and many of my colleagues and many of our staff here on Capitol Hill, as well as tens of thousands of our constituents. More recently, we have seen the example of the security breach at the IRS affecting hundreds of thousands of American taxpayers. Considering the constantly evolving cyber threats and technology, it is imperative that we do everything that we can to protect our citizens. In order to ensure this, NIST plays a very important role by providing guidelines and standards to help reduce cyber risks to federal agencies and critical infrastructure. Solutions are needed not only to prevent and detect cyber attacks, but also to bolster rapid response and recovery. Last week, I participated in several events on cybersecurity, and I am very pleased that in my district, this is an issue they're very much focused on, and certainly look forward to working with NIST to make sure that we are on top of all of these key issues. I look forward to and am appreciative of the opportunity to hear from Dr. May on how NIST plans to prioritize and manage funding, as well as how it sets its budget. I now recognize the ranking member, the gentlewoman from Connecticut, Ms. Esty, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Comstock, and thank you for holding today's important hearing to examine the fiscal year 2017 budget request for the National Institutes of Standards and Technology, which we will refer to as NIST because it's a whole lot shorter. Dr. Willie E, thank you so much for testifying this morning and for your leadership at NIST. For more than 100 years, NIST has supported the competitiveness of American companies. NIST's broad and deep technical experience has advanced measurement science, standards, and technological innovation, creating a strong U.S. economy and improving our quality of life. And I'm pleased that the President's budget for NIST recognizes its importance to this country, enabling the agency to play a prominent role in revitalizing American manufacturing and expanding technology transfer activities. The administration's budget request increases for two important manufacturing programs: the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, the MEP program, and, as was already referenced by Chairwoman Comstock, the National Network for Manufacturing Innovation. MEP centers help manufacturers increase their profitability, streamline their processes, and adopt cutting-edge manufacturing technologies. The Connecticut State Technology Extension Program, or CONSTEP as we call it, has helped numerous Connecticut manufacturing companies. For example, in my district, CONSTEP helped Hologic Incorporated, a leading developer and manufacturer of medical imaging tech systems, by working on one of their main manufacturing facilities. This facility, located in Danbury, employs more than 300 people and develops digital imaging technology for 3D mammography. CONSTEP helped this company optimize their shop floor layout in order to accommodate a new line of 3D mammography equipment and develop new training. After working with CONSTEP, the manufacturing facility saw the following improvements. Their unit production increased by 11%, lead time reduced by 50%. They achieved $280,000 in cost savings. They had an increase in sales of $80 million and 100% on-time shipment rate. Those are real figures and real jobs and real savings for the American people. And they're pretty impressive results and represent only one example, one of many, where the MEP program has been serving communities and serving companies across this country. The National Network for Manufacturing Innovation is a partnership among federal agencies, the private sector, and colleges and universities to create a national research and workforce training infrastructure for advanced manufacturing. At a time when American manufacturers face workforce challenges, such as the growing skills gap, NNMI gives us a reason to be optimistic. And I'm pleased that Congress funded NIST this year to establish the NNMI Coordinating Office. I'm also happy to see that last month, NIST announced an open topic competition for the formation of 2 new institutes. As the only agency that isn't limited to a single mission, NIST can invite a broad range of proposals to help grow America's manufacturing future. Finally, I'm pleased that the administration's budget request increases funding for technology transfer activities. Federally funded research has changed our society and our economy and has led to major job creation. It's difficult to imagine or even remember a world without the internet, GPS, health and life-saving technology that has all originated from federally funded research. In this subcommittee, we often discuss the value of transferring federally funded research to the commercial marketplace. And I was pleased to see that this budget proposes developing and expanding platforms for sharing information and knowledge. These programs represent only a small fraction of the important work done at NIST. NIST is a small federal agency with a grand purpose of promoting U.S. innovation and industrial competitiveness. At a time when U.S. leadership in these areas is being challenged, NIST is more important than ever. Ms. Chairwoman, thank you again for holding this hearing, and I look forward to working with you and our colleagues to ensure that NIST has the resources it needs to fulfill its role in promoting innovation, increasing our competitiveness, and enhancing our national security. Thank you again, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, and I now recognize the ranking member of the full committee for a statement. Ms. Johnson?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman, for holding this important hearing. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, is an agency that is central to the federal role in advancing science, promoting innovation, and creating a more prosperous nation. I look forward to hearing from our distinguished witness, Dr. May, this morning. It would be almost impossible to overstate the importance of NIST, the federal agency that promotes U.S. innovation and competitiveness by advancing measurement science, standards, and technology. In his first address to Congress, President George Washington said, "Uniformity is the currency, weights, and measures of the United States in an object of great importance, and will, and I'm persuaded, be duly attended to." This responsibility was first given to an office in the Treasury Department, but then was moved over to the National Bureau of Standards, the NIST's predecessor, in 1901. Every industry and nearly every technology relies on the measurement and standards work at NIST, from the smart electric power grid to the computer chips to building safety. NIST supplies industry, academia, and government and other users with thousands of standard reference materials, in addition to doing much of the testing and validation work in their own laboratories. Along with working with industry, academia, state and local governments, and consumer groups to develop U.S. standards, NIST accomplishes its mission of promoting U.S. innovation and competitiveness through their research laboratories, centers of excellence, and manufacturing programs. I was happy to see the proposed increase in the fiscal year 2017 budget request for those programs, and I hope that Congress will fully support the request. In particular, I was happy to see the proposed increases in NIST's programs to develop the measurement tools needed to support engineering, biology research, and biomanufacturing. Engineering, biology research, and technologies are very exciting and have the potential to solve some of society's greatest challenges, including providing food for a growing population, improving human health, reducing our dependency on fossil fuels, and dramatically transforming manufacturing. Given the promise of this research and its applications, I introduced the Engineering, Biology, Research, and Development Act of 2015 with my Science Committee colleague, Mr. Sensenbrenner. Additionally, I'm pleased the President's budget recognizes the importance of NIST's role in American manufacturing. The budget proposes an increase for both the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, or the MEP program, and the National Network for Manufacturing Innovation, the NNMI. Finally, I'm happy to see NIST's leadership in the area of forensic sciences and standards. The partnership between NIST and the Department of Justice must continue to recognize NIST's critical role in the development of technical standards for forensic evidence. However, I'd like to emphasize that NIST must ensure that the forensic standards being developed are consistent with NIST's long-standing commitment to science and a fair and balanced standard-setting process. As I have said in the past, NIST may be the most important federal agency that most people have never heard of. I appreciate that there are many worthy programs across the government, and we cannot fund everything. But supporting the agency that promotes U.S. innovation and competitiveness should be an easy choice. Madam Chairwoman, I thank you again for holding this hearing, and I look forward to working with you and our colleagues to ensure that NIST has the resources it needs to fulfill its critical role. I thank you and yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. And I now recognize the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Dr. May, thank you for being here today as well. The National Institute of Standards and Technology supports fundamental scientific research that is critical to American innovation and competitiveness. NIST helps maintain industrial and technical standards and manages cybersecurity guidelines for federal agencies. Our challenge is to set funding priorities that ensure America remains a leader in the global marketplace of ideas and products, while also being able to balance the government's budget. As Chairwoman Comstock pointed out, The area proposed funding of $47 million for the National Network of Manufacturing Innovation Program is of particular concern with the NIST fiscal year 2017 budget request. In 2014, this committee and the full House approved H.R. 2996, the Revitalize American Manufacturing Innovation Act of 2014, or RAMI Act. The RAMI Act was subsequently included in the fiscal year 2015 Omnibus Bill and signed into law by the President. This bill authorized up to $5 million per year for NNMI from NIST. The bulk of the program funding is to be transferred from the Department of Energy's Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy budget. Why hasn't this happened? It must if the program is to continue. In addition, there are concerns surrounding the explosion at NIST that occurred when a senior officer with NIST Police Services attempted to manufacture meth in a NIST facility. It is surprising that a federal agency didn't know that a meth lab was being run on its property, and without an explosion, it might have never been discovered. The meth lab explosion and subsequent investigation have raised serious concerns about the safety and security of the entire NIST campus. Information obtained during this committee's investigation of the meth lab at NIST appears to show a culture of waste, fraud, abuse, and misconduct at NIST Police Services. For example, time and attendance fraud occurred regularly at NIST Police Services. In one instance, 84 hours of overtime was recorded during a 2-week period while a full-time shift was being covered. If accurate, that would mean the officer worked 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. It also appears that police equipment worth tens of thousands of dollars is unaccounted for or missing from the police force. These unfortunate examples undermine NIST's mission to promote U.S. innovation and industrial competitiveness, which enhances economic security and improves our quality of life. I hope to hear what steps have been taken in the wake of the meth lab explosion to prevent further misuse of taxpayers' dollars. Just as important is to find out why NIST continues to ignore the RAMI Act. I look forward to hearing from our witness today, and I'll yield back.
Thank you. Now let me introduce our witness. Our witness today is Dr. Willie E, Undersecretary of Commerce for Standards and Technology and Director of the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST. Prior to his congressional confirmation, Dr. May served as acting NIST Director and acting Undersecretary of Commerce for Standards and Technology since June 2014. Prior to that assignment, Dr. May was Associate Director for Laboratory Programs, where he was responsible for oversight and direction of NIST's 7 laboratory programs and served as the Principal Deputy to the NIST Director. In addition, Dr. May has led NIST research and measurement service programs in chemistry-related areas for more than 20 years. Dr. May received his undergraduate degree from Knoxville College and his PhD in analytical chemistry from the University of Maryland. I welcome you here today, and I now recognize Dr. May for 5 minutes to present his testimony. Mike?
Can you hear me now? Well, as I said, to Full Committee Chairman Smith and Ranking Member Johnson, Subcommittee Chairwoman Comstock, and Ranking Member Esty, and members of the Subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today to present the President's FY17 budget request from the National Institute of Standards and Technology. This budget request reflects the important role that NIST plays in American innovation, productivity, trade, and public safety. The Measurement Science and Technology Foundation that NIST provides is essential to accelerating American innovation through breakthroughs such as next-generation computing to strengthen the digital economy and more efficient wireless technology to overcome the spectrum crunch. Additionally, research supported by this budget will help embed NIST's industrial sensor technologies to the factory floor, thereby extending NIST's success with the electronics industry to applications such as laser welding and bioengineering. To achieve our mission, the President has proposed a budget for us of slightly more than $1 billion, a $50 million increase over the enacted fiscal year 16 budget. In addition to this discretionary request, the President has proposed an additional $2 billion in NIST mandatory funding to fully fund a network of 45 institutes in the National Network for Manufacturing Innovation at $1.9 billion, and an additional $100 million to renovate and modernize the NIST facilities. The President's budget continues to recognize the important role that the NIST laboratory programs play by requesting $730.5 million for our scientific and technical research and services account, basically our lab program. This is a $40.5 million increase over the enacted fiscal year 16 level. This increase will allow NIST to lay the foundation for next generation computing and wireless revolutions, transfer its money-saving technology to the factory floor, and bring our precision engineering prowess to bear on emerging markets. The FY17 request will also continue to fund critical work that we are doing in the areas of cybersecurity and forensics, but with no additional request. However, we are requesting increases of $13.6 million for our Measurement Science for Future Computing Technologies and Applications program to position the U.S. to unlock the potential of future computing technologies. We're requesting an addition of $2 million for advanced sensing for manufacturing to accelerate research efforts targeting the development of advanced sensors. An additional $2 million for biomanufacturing and engineering biology to assure the quality and predictability in the design of synthetic biological systems. And $2 million for advanced communications research to develop the measurement science and tools necessary to improve spectrum sharing and increase spectrum efficiency of commercial wireless radio frequency communication systems. An additional $4.8 million to assure that NIST world-class neutron facility can continue to purchase the fuel needed to operate this critical facility. And finally, $2 million to expand our lab to market initiative, which focuses on transfer of technology from the government, the public sector, through data sharing and collaborative tools. To support our outreach for to the manufacturing industry, NIST is requesting $189 million for our Industrial Technology Services account. That's an increase of $34 million. The requested $12 million increase for MEP will be used in FY17 to complete the final round of a multi-year competition of our MEP centers, and $22 million to support the NNMI program that would allow us to fund additional institutes and provide coordination for the network. To support our aging facilities, our construction of research facilities, our CRF account, is requesting an increase of the request is $95 million. This is actually a decrease of $24 million over FY16. And at this point, I'd like to thank the subcommittee for its continuing strong support of the renovations of our aging and deteriorating infrastructure that would otherwise threaten our ability to deliver our mission. The CRF number is a decrease, as I said earlier, from the FY16 enacted level, but it reflects a significant initial investment of $119 million in FY16 to begin the renovation of our radiation physics building. The request this year is $40 million or at least $40 million of the 17 requests will fund the second phase of a multi-year renovation of that building, and the remaining $55 million of the request will be used to fund maintenance, repair, improvements, and major renovations of our facilities in Gaithersburg, Colorado, and Hawaii. In conclusion, the FY17 budget reflects the administration's recognition of the important role that NIST plays in innovation, as well as the impact of the research that we do and the measurement services we provide in laying and maintaining the foundation for our nation's long-term job creation and prosperity. Through our laboratory programs, our outreach efforts, and our standards development work, we are dedicated to providing U.S. industry with the tools it needs to innovate, compete, and flourish in this fierce global compete in this global economy. Madam Chairwoman, I look forward to continuing to work with you and members of the subcommittee, and will now be happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. As you've discussed and we've discussed here, NIST will continue to fund the works in the areas of cybersecurity, and I've certainly been very interested in that given all of the recent problems that we're running into there. So I wanted to ask, of the $74.2 million request in cybersecurity, more than half supports R&D efforts. Can you just give us a little picture of some of that R&D taking place and how academia and industry are involved, and just a little view on that, if you could?
Well, we have a number of efforts in cybersecurity. First of all, we have a very robust laboratory-based research program in cybersecurity. But this is an area that is moving very, very rapidly, and we saw the need for reaching out and including industry in this. And we established our National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, where we work with 22 companies in that area to work on problems that they see as a priority, and sort of take our standards that we develop sort of based on our authority and bake them into practice working with these 22 companies. That is working very well, and we expect that to continue in the future. We have a NICE program, which is National Initiative on Cybersecurity Education, where we are trying to educate the next generation on the value of cybersecurity, and actually provide training in that realm. And we are improving or increasing our bench depth in cryptography, both from a defensive as well as an offensive perspective, if you will.
Okay, one of the things that I hear from the companies in my district is how difficult it is for people to get clearances. And so, so oftentimes you get this talent, and these kids are really good who want to come out and work in this area, say, and work for the government, but the clearance process takes forever. Have you found that a problem as you're trying to get talent within the government too?
Well, certainly it's a challenge in the area because there's a limited supply. However, we are very aggressive, and we are, I think, addressing that issue. Certainly.
Are you able to shorten the time? Because the problem is, these kids are coming out, they're getting recruited by a lot of private companies where they're going to make more money than in the government. So if we're going to get them into the government and have them working for us, we need to make sure we can streamline that process and not lose them because of sort of bureaucracy within.
I could not agree more.
Right. Okay. Let's see. How do you, given the importance of cybersecurity, and it's certainly in the forefront of our minds on a lot of these issues we are dealing with, how do you decide to increase spending in other areas and pick your priorities on this? And do you feel comfortable where we're at on the cybersecurity budget?
The committee has been very generous to us over the last several years in cybersecurity, and certainly we think that we have the resources now to deliver our mission in that area. And we look forward to continuing to work with you to make sure we can titrate this as we go forward, to make sure that we maintain the resources necessary to deliver our mission and work with both government and industry to improve the cybersecurity posture for our country.
Okay, thank you. And I know we have, the NIST is hosting its next cybersecurity framework workshop on April 6th and 7th. Can you give us a little insight into what changes to the cybersecurity framework that we might see featured there?
Well, we
Give us a little preview of that.
We actually don't know.
Okay.
The reason for this meeting is to work with the industry to determine what changes we might need to make to that framework, how quickly we might do that, and how. So this is an information gathering meeting so that we know how to blaze the path forward with that framework.
Okay. Thank you, and I now yield to Ms. Estee for her 5 minutes.
Again, thank you, Chairwoman Comstock, for holding today's hearing. Dr. May, as a member of the Science Committee as well as the Transportation Committee, I understand the importance of reliable communications technology, particularly in our new developing advanced transportation systems. From railroads to tech startups, our companies depend on advanced communications and spectrum to be able to communicate in real time. Dr. May, NIST is asking for a $2 million increase to $15 million in funding for its measurement sciences program to support advanced communications networks. Can you please describe for us the challenges we face with the rapid advances we're experiencing in our communications technologies and how NIST intends to address these challenges through the proposed increase?
Okay. Well, these activities will be focused primarily in our newly or recently created Communications Technology Laboratory. And we have 3 main work streams within that laboratory. One is public safety communications to improve the technology and provide the standards necessary to build out this nationwide LTE network for first responders. So we're responsible for the measurement standards and testing to make sure that we can do this and do this in a manner that we provide open competition for the vendors of devices that would want to play in that space. Obviously, there are some measurement and standards issues associated with our with spectrum sharing and spectrum efficiency. And finally, we are working with players around the world to define what 5G will look like and to implement that to sort of make sure that the U.S. is not left behind when it comes to the next generation communications technologies.
Thank you. That's very helpful, and this is an ongoing, particularly on the public safety front. I can tell you in the 41 cities and towns I represent, this is an ongoing challenge about interoperability and their ability to communicate with each other and coordinate. So I hope we can move rapidly forward. So those investments the taxpayers are making on the local level are really wise investments that are going to be good for a number of years, and they're not going to have to, 2 years from now, change their whole systems out again, which will be very challenging. Connecticut has a thriving manufacturing community in my district, from Jonal Labs, which does aerospace and work for NASA, to United Technologies Corporations, to Clickbond, to Becton Dickinson. Connecticut companies manufacture a broad range of products, aerospace and bond fasteners. Through my conversations with these companies, one common theme emerges, and that is a concern about workforce readiness. Do our young people have the skills necessary to compete in modern manufacturing? As you know, a strong domestic manufacturing base is essential for high-quality jobs and for a living wage for many people in this country. Can you explain to us a little bit how the MEP's Export Tech program operates and what it's doing to expand overseas markets and tech transfer for U.S. companies, and the goals of this program in the fiscal year 17 budget?
Well, what we want to do is work with other entities within government to, one, demonstrate that manufacturing, in fact, is a viable career path for young folks and get the word out. We have established a National Manufacturing Day that takes place in early October every year, where we sort of point to the future, at least try to get to young folks to see and visualize the future, that manufacturing is cool, there are good high-paying jobs, but more than that, working in manufacturing is really being truly American, because we need to bring manufacturing jobs. We need to back to the U.S. We need to be an exporter and not only an importer of goods. So we are working with the entire community to try to strengthen manufacturing and make sure that we get the word out that there is a future in manufacturing and it's critical to our country.
Thank you very much, and I suspect that the ranking member of the full committee will pick up with biomanufacturing, which I would love to ask some questions at, but my time is expired. Thank you very much, and I yield back.
Thank you, and I now recognize Mr. Palmer for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Dr. May, NIST has its own police force. How much do you spend each year for that group?
About $8 million, sir.
About $8 million. What activities or investigations justify having a police unit within NIST?
Well, primarily, we've historically had a police force at NIST, and the Federal Protective Service has granted us the ability to maintain that on our campus. We also have some fairly sensitive assets that I won't go into detail about here, but I will do in private conversations with the committee that have to be maintained.
Well, is it
So
a
that was
police
the
force?
historical basis.
Is it a police force or a security force?
Actually, we have both. We have a perimeter security force that guards the perimeter, and we actually have a police force that is responsible for policing the campus.
What do you spend on the perimeter security force?
The exact numbers I'll have to get to you, but that is a private, that is a contract police force.
It's a contract
Yes.
force, all right. Does your police force have the authority to make arrests?
They do have the authority to make arrests, and they have made arrests.
Okay. How many officers does NIST employ in that force?
I guess I don't have the numbers right before me, but I would imagine with the police force, if we were fully staffed, 15 to 20, and the external security, probably another dozen. But I will get those numbers to you specifically.
Okay. And I assume they're armed?
Well, I guess, don't know that it's appropriate for me to discuss that in detail, that operation in detail, but I can provide those numbers for you.
I don't think there's any
Not
issue
direct.
here with that. I think it's pretty evident that they are armed, and what I want to know is it sidearms? Is it small arms? Is it military-style weapons? How are they equipped?
Sir, I'll be happy to provide that as a matter of record to the committee.
How long would that take?
We can get that to you by the end of the day. If you,
You outsource your security. Why don't you outsource your police force?
well, I have asked for, we are a science and technology agency, and knowing that, I've recently asked for an assessment of our security, overall security posture by 3 external security experts. They have given us their thoughts on the right sizing and nature of security force for our campus, and the questions that you ask are being considered.
Do you have them on one campus, or do you have multiple locations where your police are employed?
We have police on our Gaithersburg campus and on our Boulder campus,
You know,
Boulder, Colorado.
we've got 70-something, I believe we have 70-something federal agencies that have armed agents, including the EPA that has spent several $1 million. And I don't know if it bothers anybody else, but it seems that it's almost like we've militarized federal agencies. And I just don't understand why we have to have each agency, so many agencies with their own armed agents providing security when you could outsource that. And I commend you for outsourcing your security force. And I understand you have certain specific issues that would require protection. But I am very concerned about so many federal agencies having armed agents and being armed with military-style weapons. So if you would get back with that information, and I think it would be helpful if you looked at outsourcing your police force.
Certainly, that issue is among the recommendations that we've gotten from our 3 security experts, and we are mulling over that issue now, exactly how to move forward to improve the security posture for both of our campuses.
Well, thank you for your answers, Dr. May. I'll yield back, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, and I'll now recognize Ms. Bonamici, who is also sitting in as our ranking member now. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Dr. May, welcome back to the committee. I want to start by thanking you and your team at NIST for working with Oregon's Manufacturing Extension Partnership, OMAP. I know they appreciate the collaboration, and since 2003, OMAP has helped with creating or maintaining more than 15,000 manufacturing jobs in Oregon, and you talked about the importance of getting the word out there that these are good jobs. I think you said cool jobs. And I want to mention that I went out to tour Fort George Brewery in my district, and they got some help with OMEP to help with their canning process. That was pretty cool. Also have in my district ARE Manufacturing. That's a contract shop in Newburgh, Oregon, that specializes in making precision equipment, components for manufacturers. By working with OMEP to develop a job training program for their employees, they were able to increase their entry-level hiring pool and hire more qualified people. And so I appreciate all the work that NIST has done with the MEP programs across the country, but particularly those I'm familiar with in Oregon. Dr. May, over the past several years, our nation has experienced historic and devastating natural disasters, and numerous communities across the country are still recovering and rebuilding. NIST is the lead agency for 2 important natural disaster programs, the National Earthquake Hazards Reduction Program and the National Windstorm Impact Reduction Program. Now, the Pacific Northwest is especially prone to earthquakes. We are sitting off the Cascadia subduction zone out in the Northwest, and we are overdue, so it's not a question of if there will be an earthquake, it's when. So can you describe the role that NIST plays in these programs, both as the lead agency as well as your role in working on research to improve the performance of buildings and infrastructure in the face of a disaster?
Well, we have a major program in our engineering laboratory, a part of which used to be our Building and Fire Research Laboratory, to provide the basic science and engineering technology to sort of right-size the construction of buildings for the areas to the hazards in that geographic locale. And that's a long-standing program, and with support from this committee, we have been able to strengthen that program. But we also coordinate NEHRP, where we work with other agencies to develop new standards and codes based on knowledge that we gain from natural disasters that we actually can't control, but we can sort of try to respond to them and make our built environment more resilient and resistant to things that we can't control.
Thank you. Certainly more investment at the front end saves lives and property later. Also, Dr. May, federally funded research has led to many innovations. We've heard about some of those today: GPS, barcodes, life-saving medications and treatments. In this committee, we often hear about the challenges and obstacles to successfully transferring federally funded research from the lab to the private marketplace. The budget proposes an increase in technology transfer activities to develop data sharing and collaborative tools and services. So can you elaborate, please, on the efforts, how these efforts would help enable the transfer of federally funded research to the marketplace?
Well, certainly there are, as you mentioned, and others have mentioned, there are a lot of very important technologies and tools that are being developed in our laboratories, but it's a very large enterprise, and we don't right now have ready access to the information of the various components. For example, if I'm in the private sector and I want to make something, there might be inventions across several federal agencies where I could pull that together if I only knew that they were there. So our primary effort is to develop a resource, one-stop shopping, if you will, to look at the investments and the technologies that are being developed in the public sector that can be brought to bear to develop new technologies, new inventions in the private sector.
Terrific. Thank you very much. I yield back. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I now recognize Mr. Latimer for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and Dr. May, thank you for being here. During my first year in Congress here, I've been quite amazed. We live in a reality TV show, conspiracy TV show. Those things dominate our culture today, but the more I've been here, the more I see that a lot of things that happen in the federal government would make we feed a lot of the information to these. But could we bring up the first slide here? I want to bring up an incident that I'm sure you're aware of that happened in May of 2015, where one of the senior NIST police officers was operating a meth lab that apparently there was an explosion at the agency. He was using a vacant building to actually cook meth. Of course, thankfully, that police officer is currently in jail for manufacturing methamphetamine, but the fact that he was able to smuggle the necessary materials into a vacant NIST building is embarrassing, but it's also raises serious questions about safety and security of the whole facility, as well as the people who live and work in Gaithersburg. I'm sure that you would agree that the meth lab explosion was a serious incident. I'm sure you're aware of that incident. You feel that was a serious?
Certainly was, sir.
It was. Is that one of the most serious incidents that has ever happened at NIST?
From a perspective
Since you've been there.
Of embarrassment, well, I've been there 45 years.
Yeah.
I've been there a long time. On an embarrassment scale, yes. In terms of actual structural damage, no, because the structural damage was very, very minimal. We've had a fire in one of our laboratories. So in terms of destruction of property, this ranks very low because the building that this activity took place in was designed for hazardous, it used to be called the hazardous lab, as a matter of fact, and it's designed to actually, it has blowout panels in case there's a pressure buildup. The panels behaved as they should. They were placed back in the next day, and that was minimal structural damage to the building.
So the primary thing, though, was an embarrassment.
Yes.
So that was, but you don't feel that there's a security concern or that the money we're spending on officers, law enforcement officers, it is actually committing felonies on property. That's not a concern, or?
Oh, that is a big concern. That is a big concern. As I had mentioned before you came in, after this incident took place, I requested input from security experts from 3 other sources that operate environments like us to give us their input on how we can strengthen the security posture of our campus. Beyond this, and all indicated that in a situation similar to this, it would be hard to anticipate what a trusted member of your security staff might do.
And I understand, and I apologize for just popping in, but I am dealing with Homeland Security issues as well, which is very important. But after the explosion, you briefed this committee staff on the incident, and the briefing, you referred to the explosion as a near miss. Mm-hmm. You stand by that characterization that it was, a near miss since no one was hurt, or?
Well, it opened our eyes and made us, well, for one, it sort of compelled me to get some outside expertise or input on how we might strengthen our security posture and to take a deep dive.
Okay.
Actually. So I guess near miss, and that no one was seriously hurt. And again, it opened our eyes that we needed to take a deep look and investigation into our security posture.
Okay, could we bring up slide 2? I want to make sure we get to this too as our time is running down. This is an email from your Chief of Staff, Kevin Kimball, in the aftermath of the meth lab explosion. Referring to the explosion, Mr. Kimball writes, "Can't see how this rises to an audit risk. Don't remember briefing the auditors after the plutonium assume incident, and that was 1,000 times more of a risk. What incident is he talking about that was 1,000 times worse than a meth lab exploding?
Well, that was an incident that took place on, in our Boulder laboratory, I think in 2007, where some plutonium, a small amount of plutonium, was released into the sewer system based on some research that we were doing out there.
Into the sewer system. Do you agree that that was 1,000 times worse than the meth lab?
Well, I had not thought about how I would quantify that, but certainly I think that, in fact, in terms of danger to the public, yes, that was more serious than that particular incident.
So was this plutonium incident released or reported to this committee or any members of Congress, or?
It was, and in fact, the then acting director testified before this committee about that incident.
Okay. Are there any other incidents that we should know about that are 1,000 times or 100 times worse than the meth lab?
Not that I am aware of.
Okay. Well, I think the other questions I have already been answered, Madam Chairwoman, and so I'll yield back. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Okay, I'm sorry. I now recognize Mr. Tonko for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome, Dr. May. As a representative for the Capital Region of New York, I realize that moving toward an innovation economy is the key to our economic growth. With that in mind, I'm pleased to witness our nation's renewed desire to invest in high-tech manufacturing and an innovation economy. I see great hope for these efforts, especially inspired by the formulation of the National Network for Manufacturing Innovation, or NNMI. I have some questions this morning that aim to seek clarity in the NIST NNMI selection process as we move forward. In December of 2015, NIST published a notice of intent that indicated that NIST was especially interested in 2 areas of focus, including collaborative manufacturing robots and biopharmaceuticals manufacturing. However, in the federal funding opportunity, the FFO, neither topic was mentioned. This year, the Department of Defense issued a request for information for new manufacturing innovation institutes, and the Department of Defense listed 6 technical focus areas under consideration, including 2 topics: one, the assistive and soft robotics, and bioengineering for regenerative medicine as another, which are similar to NIST's area of focus. Presumably, NIST and DOD would not want to select areas, I would imagine, that are too much alike. So, Dr. May, can you further discuss the process that NIST would use or will use to select a proposal?
Well, please excuse the colloquialism, but for the December announcement, I'll just say my bad. What we intended to do was address the concern that you've expressed, that we were looking in our institutes that we would sponsor through the Department of Commerce not to duplicate anything that was ongoing or planned by the Department of Energy or the Department of Defense or any other federal agency that would be standing up a manufacturing institute. And we gave 2 examples. The examples of sort of biomanufacturing and engineering robotics were just 2 examples. And in retrospect, they probably should not have been called out because it did cause confusion. But I am here to guarantee to you that our process and the process that we launched about a week and a half ago, is one that will be truly open, and we will not support any institute, any type of institute that is already in existence or planned by any other federal agency.
So as you go forward, the coordination with DOD would be a very strong part of your inner operations?
It will be, it has been, and through our Advanced Manufacturing Program Office, we actually provide the coordination and glue for the network. So we are in constant contact. There is a deputy's call, at least that I'm a part of, and with representatives from the National Economic Council, as well as DOE and DOD on a regular basis. So we are in constant communication.
And could one agency decide to not select a proposal that was too similar to a proposal that another agency is considering?
As a matter of fact, I think we have processes in place where it wouldn't be just the agency decide, we would decide as a collective, because we are trying to operate a network, although it has individual nodes, but we're trying to work on behalf of, and I go this again is a cliche, but the American people, and certainly we don't want to have any duplicative activities.
Well, I know a number of institutions in my district have specific abilities in these disciplines, so I'm just concerned, is NIST planning sequential awards?
Can you explain what you mean by sequential
Well,
awards?
as you go forward, will there be additional awards that NIST is looking at where you would use the initial pool of proposals for future awards?
Yes. What we are planning to do is to, with this call, essentially establish a queue. And we have resources to fund one institute from our FY16 funds. The FY17 funds should allow us, the funds requested in the 17 budget should allow us to establish 2 additional ones. And we would establish the queue based on the call that is out at present.
Okay, I would strongly encourage the continuation of some of these thematics that you've outlined. I think they're critical to our manufacturing base, and certainly I think that there's a great contribution that many of our higher ed centers and private sectors could offer through a collaborative. So I'm a very strong fan of NNMI and hope it continues in a way that's targeted to the strengths that we have in our nation's districts across the board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that,
And I now recognize Mr. Hultgren for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I appreciate it so much. And thank you, Dr. May, for being here. Do really appreciate the work at NIST and see how important cooperation is, communication is. And wanted just to ask you a few questions. I apologize. I've got a couple hearings going on at the same time. So if any of this has been covered, I'm sorry I wasn't able to hear about it, but did want to get some answers on this. I wondered, have any program funds come from DOE's EERE program as stipulated in the bipartisan RAMI Act, which was something I supported and co-sponsored? If not, why not? And is there any plan for funds to be transferred from EERE to the Department of Commerce to carry out NMMI in the future?
Well, first of all, we very appreciate your support of the RAMI bill because that authorized us to, sponsor institutes from the Department of Commerce. And it also gave NIST the authority to set up our National Manufacturing Program Office to coordinate the activities for the network. However, that was an authorization bill and not an appropriation bill, and we did not think the bill says the Secretary of Energy may, didn't say shall, and to the state, this hasn't happened, but we have gotten an appropriation in 16 for $25 million to begin this process, and we're going to use funds from that to support at least one network in 16, and with the request in 17, 2 more, and to begin activities of coordination, information sharing within the network.
Well, I do hope it moves forward. Were you involved in or were you aware of any discussions between the Commerce Department and the Energy Department about carrying out the RAMI Act after it was signed into law? It sounds like there was some conversations there. Were you a part of those?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And that was really what you're referring to now, where it was the difference between whether it was appropriations or an act?
Yes.
Okay. Well, again, hopefully that can be clarified. Hopefully these important programs, some in Illinois, can move forward and absolutely will be making a difference. I wonder, how will NIST evaluate competing proposals from different industry sectors? Will NIST treat each industry as equal and decide on the basis of the proposal detail and private financial contributions when you're looking at the RAMI Act?
Well, in short, I think we're going to cut the best deal for the American people.
What does that Can you explain that a little bit better for me?
Well, what we're looking for in these institutes are institutes that have the potential to be sustainable. They need to address one of the needed areas in the advanced manufacturing domain. And we will look at all proposals and select the one based on no duplication of activities currently ongoing within other institutes, and address the greatest need, the strongest partnership among industry and academia.
So your plan is to treat each industry as equal and truly decide on the basis of proposal details and financial, private financial contributions, and not have a preset agenda?
Exactly.
Okay. And how do you plan to integrate new centers with existing ones?
Well, there'll be, new centers will be a part of the network. And they will they will have the services of the Advanced Manufacturing National Program Office to provide them with best practices, information sharing. So they will, again, be a member of the team.
Okay. So again, the RAMI Act, again, I was proud to support that, proud to be a co-sponsor of it, but also a big reason why I supported it was, my understanding was it was merit-based, non-political process for soliciting, evaluating, and competitively funding new manufacturing innovation centers. That's still your commitment?
Still our commitment.
Okay. And we want to obviously see that happen. Hopefully this will continue to move forward. We all agree it's important. It's been a little disappointing and frustrating on our part that it hasn't moved more quickly. And my hope is that that will happen soon, and that the commitment that you've made today and previous commitments of keeping politics out of this and really looking at industries that are best fit and can put the best proposals together will be the ones that are receiving the opportunity in these centers. So I'm out of time. I will yield back to the chairman. Thank you.
And sir, that is our commitment to you and to the subcommittee.
Thank you, Dr. May. And I'd like to thank you also for your testimony and the members for their questions. And the record will remain open for 2 weeks for additional written comments and written questions from members. We appreciate your work on this important subject and look forward to continuing to work with you, Dr. May. The hearing is adjourned.
Thank you.